I have watched some of the best hockey that I've seen in a while, and I am not ready for it to end.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here in the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about the fact that I think this Four Nations face-off is some of the best hockey that I have seen. I'm going to talk about hockey culture and if it is back, and then confidence with the Blues' upcoming homestand that begins this Saturday. So there is a lot to talk about here on Locked On Blues. I want to remind you to subscribe on YouTube here at Locked On Blues or any social media platform that we had, whether that is Twitter at Locked On Blues or any of your podcasting streaming services. It is always greatly appreciated. My everydayers know to leave a comment down below and to just be engaged, be active, because I do read your comments. And sometimes they even make it onto the episode as a topic. So we talk about a lot of things here in Locked On Blues. But one thing that we've been talking about recently is the Four Nations face-off. And listen, I'm going to be very transparent with you. I did have a feeling that the finals would be between USA and Canada. I did. I had a feeling. I kind of just knew that it was going to happen. And I think the players on Team Sweden and Team Finland are still very talented. And this has nothing to do with their talent in any way, but I just feel like the US and Canada just have more of a loaded roster. And if you want to know more about the rosters between the two teams, please look back on yesterday's episode of Locked On Blues. That's where I broke down the rosters from Team USA and Team Canada. But today, I'm going to talk to you a little about the other teams that did not make it, which is Finland and Sweden, and some players that I liked on both of those teams. Because again, while yes, they did not make it to the finals, they are still very talented players. And I thought that they played a really good game. And I think that watching Sweden play the other night, they played great. They got the win, 3-1 win. So we're going to talk about it. So on Team Finland, a player that I have always liked is Sebastian Aho. For whatever reason, Sebastian Aho is one of those players. I know there's two Sebastian Ahos in the NHL. I know. I just enjoy watching him, and I feel like he's been in the league for quite a while now. You have Alexander Barkov, needless to say, one of the better players on this team with the Panthers. Then you have... we know him well, Mikko Rantanen with the Avalanche. So we see him quite a bit. And that's like the thing, too, that I always kind of laugh about is that some of these players we do see because of them being in our lovely Central Division. And then I told you about the New York Rangers, how they have like a lot of players in this. And they have Capo Caco. So they have him. Obviously, Patrick Lane with the Canadiens. Great player as well. Looking at defense, right? The Dallas Stars, yet again, have another player that stands out, and that's Miro Heiskanen. Again, one of the better players on Team Finland. I wouldn't necessarily say there's any other player that I'm like that impressed with. I mean, the Dallas Stars also have Esa Lindell, so it's a pretty good, I would say, Dallas Stars team this year, so I'm not surprised, but it is funny when you have two Finnish players that made it on. I mean, it's good for them, right? And then their goalies, like, here's the thing. I don't think any of the goalies are exceptional. I think that some of the other teams, like Team Canada, Team US, had better goalies overall. But Kevin Lankinen from the Canucks is good, so that's fine. All right, Team Sweden. So Team Sweden, in my opinion, just has better players overall. And if I were to rank the teams, it would go US, Canada, Sweden, Finland in terms of the player talent just on paper. And again, I know this isn't like super serious, right? Like we're just talking about, a tournament that, yes, it does mean something, but it's not like you're winning the Stanley Cup from this tournament. It's the first time they're doing it. I think they're going to do it again. I like it, but let's go over the roster from Team Sweden. So obviously, Jasper Bratt of the New Jersey Devils has been outstanding. Not surprised whatsoever. He is a good player, and he offers a lot. And he's really aggressive too by the net. Leo Carlson of the Anaheim Ducks. Again, no surprise on that one. You have Philip Forsberg of the Nashville Predators. So one of my favorite players of this team, and I don't like this team, but I do like the player. It's William Karlsson of the VGK. We all know how I feel about the Vegas Golden Knights, okay? I think they don't cheat, but they definitely maneuver around some things, right? We all know about Mark Stone and the LTIR, and I just feel like the Vegas Golden Knights were a likable team for like 1 minute, and then they became very unlikable. And it's just because some of the moves that their higher ups have done. I wouldn't necessarily say it's because of the players. I just think that the team overall, like they have done some things that are just a little bit shady. But anyways, you have William Karlsson. You have William Nylander. Again, Toronto Maple Leafs had a good show out for this. Elias Peterson of the Canucks, not surprised. And then Lucas Raymond, by the way, of the Detroit Red Wings. He's been all right. Mika Zibanejad, I always say it wrong, of the Rangers. Literally, great player, hate the Rangers. So overall, you can already see that there's more talent. Defense, some names that stood out to me. Rasmus Dolan of the Buffalo Sabres. Victor Hedman of the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's a good one. Erik Karlsson of the Pittsburgh Penguins. A lot of Karlssons and Ericssons. And yeah, I would get kind of confused if I was on that team. Rasmus Anderson of the Calgary Flames. And then Gustav Forsling of the Panthers. And then in net, the whole net situation was kind of crazy. You have Ulmark, Gustafsson, Mark Sherman was out, so then Sam Ersson went in. It was like a whole thing. But yeah, like this is what I'm saying. Like if maybe they had a team in there, like, and I know Russia didn't do it because like they weren't allowed to do it. But like if the Russians were in it, I feel like they would have been a really competitive team. I mean, there were so many talented Russian players in the NHL. So I was a little bit like disappointed about that. But it is hard though, like when you have to do the four nations, because obviously most of the players are Canadian, followed by American. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like there's this huge like pool of players that are not that. So you do have to sometimes maybe get guys that you necessarily wouldn't consider to be some of the best players in the league, but they're the best player of that country. And I think that's what makes the Olympics so interesting too, by the way. And I cannot wait for hockey to be like for the NHL guys to be in the Olympics, because I just feel like there's just such an element of competitiveness. And I think it's awesome. And not for nothing, but I think that the All-Star game is awesome. And I told you I love the skills competition. And that's something that I really miss. And it will be in Long Island, New York next year. So I'm going to maybe go, honestly, because I just enjoy the skills competition aspect of it. Like that's what I like. And I feel like that this was a really good, entertaining slate of hockey. The one thing I will say though is teams went back to practice yesterday. Some teams went back for the first time today. It is a little weird that some of these teams are missing such big key players due to the fact that they're in Boston right now awaiting the finals for tomorrow night. I wish that somehow maybe like the NHL could have scheduled it so that way teams wouldn't be missing vital practices. Now, I'm not saying the Blues because honestly, let's be so for real, we're not making the playoffs. But when you have really good players like on the Stars or the Avalanche or, what's a good team in the East? The Panthers. Yeah, like, I don't know. If I were a fan of one of those teams, I would be a little bit annoyed that some of my key players couldn't be at team practice, because even if they did win this Four Nations face-off, it doesn't add any points to that team season, and the end goal is winning the Stanley Cup. It's not, winning the Four Nations face-off. I like the competitiveness, but let's be so for real here. No player is going to say, yeah, I'd rather win the Four Nations over winning the Stanley Cup. I do like, however, to see Matthew and Brady Tkachuk playing together. That just makes me so happy in so many ways, because hopefully one day they'll be teammates wearing the blue note. Well, there is something that we need to talk about when it comes to this Four Nations face-off. But before I do that, I want to tell you about my friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my to go. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite, okay? So this is what you need to do. You need to get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. I feel like hockey culture is coming back to the States. I know there's some states in America that are huge in hockey culture, like Massachusetts, even here in St. Louis, Minnesota. There's a lot of places that do have a really good hockey culture. But then there's places that don't really have that. And we've seen that with maybe some of the teams that didn't work out in their respective state. And I feel like because of this Four Nations face-off, I have been seeing so much buzz on social media about hockey. A little fun fact. The USA and Canada game that was on my birthday on Saturday the 15th generated the most amount of views, okay, dating back to the 2014 Stanley Cup. That is huge. I feel like hockey is such an underrated sport. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about this. I know this is a Blues podcast, but we have some guys playing in this tournament, right? And I feel like here's the thing. Hockey is one of the best sports because it has a lot of elements that I personally find entertaining. It has the physicality, it has the skill set, and most importantly, it's fast paced. And I feel like a lot of sports, like if you like baseball, and JD does a great job with the Locked On Cardinals podcast, and I do enjoy baseball, and I'm not saying that, but it's so like different than baseball and basketball with all the stoppage, and football again, because hockey just keeps on going. I know that there's penalties and there's icings, and I get that things happen in the game, but for the most part, hockey just has this sense of speediness that you don't really get out of some of the other sports. It's very choppy, the other sports. The other aspect I like about hockey is the physicality. In hockey, obviously, players get to fight. Now, fighting isn't something that happens as often, but within the first 9 seconds of play during Saturday's game, 3 fights did accumulate, which again shows me that people that watch that game are like, whoa, I forgot how cool this was. All the fighting and all the physicality that takes place on the rink. And this is something that I'm hoping that teams can take back to their respective club. I think that at the end of the day, when there is fighting, when there is physicality, and when there is all of those elements, it makes the game more entertaining to the general public. And listen, I'm a hockey person. And before I got into the media side of hockey, I was a hockey fan overall. And I think the number one thing for me is I know how niche this sport is. And I know sometimes how selective we can be. And by we, I mean the hockey fans. Like when I have somebody make a comment to me about hockey and they're like, oh, yeah, this is great. I can't believe I never watched it. I get annoyed sometimes. And I don't mean to, because I try to be welcoming. But sometimes it does rub me the wrong way if a non-hockey person all of a sudden is into hockey. And it's like, well, I was here first. I've been watching this sport my entire life. And now all of a sudden you're into it. Like, that's the one thing that I feel like I have to let go of because I don't want it to be a closed off sport. Like the NFL, everybody's mostly watching football, right? Baseball is a little bit more nichey. Basketball, everybody watches, but hockey, it's like we're the secret club. And if you're not a hockey fan from day one, it's like you're not welcome. And that's not how I think it should be, but that's kind of the stereotype that we get. Because I have people that say to me all the time, they're like, oh, I'm surprised that you're talking to me about hockey since you know that I'm not a hockey person. Like, I'll talk to anybody about hockey first off. So that's really not like what the issue is. I think what the problem is that people don't watch the sport. And now all of a sudden they're watching the sport, but it's the sport that I have been watching my entire life, the sport that I am in love with, the sport that, is my job. It's more than just a sport. And I think that when you have grown up being a huge hockey fan, a huge hockey person, and all of a sudden people are now jumping on that bandwagon, it can be a little bit frustrating. And it's not like I'm trying to gatekeep hockey, right? I'm not going around and people saying, oh, you can't watch hockey. I'm gatekeeping it. But I definitely feel like hockey culture is changing to where, people that normally don't watch hockey are now watching hockey. And I think that's a really good thing too, is the fact that you do have non-hockey people developing an interest in such a niche sport. And this is a debate that I feel like is a never-ending debate because I could have somebody on this podcast, right? That's a huge baseball fan. They love the Cardinals. Baseball is like their blood. Like they love baseball. And they could say the same thing. Oh, when the Cards get good, everyone just jumps on the bandwagon. And yeah, when the Blues went to the Stanley Cup final, I felt the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, where are all these Blues fans coming from? And I think that it's one of those things that whenever you have a team that does show success, you're going to get those people that all of a sudden show up. But you know that you were here since day one. And it's funny. Like, it's with every sport too, even football. People always make jokes about like Cowboys fans, right? If you're a Cowboys fan, you're probably a Yankees fan, you're probably a Lakers fan, and you're probably like a Rangers fan. It's like those teams. And I do find it funny because the reality is that there are people that just jump on the bandwagon. They like to cheer for whichever team is doing well in that moment. I think being a fan of a team that has struggled tremendously the past couple seasons, it gives you a different perspective and outlook on different things. I think being a Blues fan, from winning the cup to now not even being in the playoffs for most likely 3 seasons in a row, it does humble you and it does make you realize how difficult it is to get there. It's not like it's easy in any single way to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's not. It's one of the most challenge out of all the sports. I honestly think it's the most challenging championship to win is the Stanley Cup. I think the NHL playoffs, they're the most physical. They're the most mentally draining. I think that there's a lot of factors that go into it. And besides the traveling, I mean, if you have 2 teams that are really far away, like imagine like a team like New Jersey or New Jersey. I was gonna say no, New Jersey and like the Kings. You get what I'm saying? Like it's just really random teams, honestly. But it's just like one of those things where that would be a really difficult Stanley Cup final because of all the traveling. And I think that that just goes into the account that with baseball, yes, it's challenging, but it's not as physical unless like you're a pitcher and that could be physical. NFL is challenging because you're one and done. So you just have to really, ball out and win potentially 3 or 4 games in a row. NBA, I mean, it's not that the NBA isn't physical. And I'm not trying to diss on basketball. I just think that the NBA is very different from what it used to be. It's more of an offensive league and not as much defensive. So I don't feel like the physicality is as much. I'm not denying that it is a physical league. Definitely is physical. Just it's a little bit different from what it used to be from when I was growing up. So I think overall, it's all very different. But at the same time, it is not easy to win any type of championship in any type of league. And that's why I go back to saying hockey is, in my opinion, the most challenging because of all the physicality that gets put into it. But you know what? Tomorrow's episode, we'll talk more about the Four Nations face-off in the finals, but I want to focus on my Blues because the St. Louis Blues, they have a 3-game homestand this weekend. And I have some updates on what's going to happen with players such as Parayko and Binner because I know that's been on everyone's mind. But I want to remind you to subscribe to Locked On Blues here on YouTube or any of your podcasting outlets, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music. If we're on SoundCloud, that's what's up. I have no idea if we're on SoundCloud, but make sure to subscribe and follow again on Twitter at Locked On Blues or my own Twitter at Haley T. Simon. I talk all things St. Louis Blues. I am Blues 24/7. Literally, I feel like that's all I've been wearing is blue, like the color blue lately. I think I just miss my Blues hockey. Even though it does disappoint me most of the time, I miss it and I love it. And I don't care because, again, I'm delusional and I don't mind being delusional. So here we go. Here we go. The Blues have a 3-game homestand this coming weekend after this break. The boys got back to practice yesterday, by the way. They were on the ice for a full team practice. And then the Blues are getting ready, as I said, for a 3-game homestand. It's going to be a difficult homestand, right? Because you're having the Winnipeg Jets, the Colorado Avalanche, and then, yes, the Seattle Kraken. So really good teams, especially the first. So you do have those really good, strong, competitive teams. I think for the Blues, what they really need to focus on is just making sure that once all their players are back in the lineup, they're just ready to go. And it's not going to be a lot of time. So luckily today, Jeremy Rutherford, who does such a great job reporting on the St. Louis Blues, was able to put out some quotes from the Blues' plans with Parayko and Binnington from when they return. Coach Montgomery said, we definitely have to give them rest. They have to play games for us. But if we're coming in for practice, maybe we'll tell them to stay home a couple of days so they can recharge the batteries. Not only have they not had the break, they're playing real intense hockey. The game Thursday is going to be emotional. It's going to be physical and mentally draining, and they need a break from that. I think that the Blues don't have much to play for, and I'm not trying to be rude, but I feel like this tournament is actually meaningful for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Joel Hofer plays on Saturday in net for the Blues against Winnipeg because he has had the time to rest. As I said, Will Cranley, he is up just for this week to practice, but obviously better if most likely he'll be backing up Hofer on Saturday. That's just nothing was said about that. That's just my prediction. I know that's only 4 games in 2 weeks, but still it's been very physical hockey. So a lot has going on. I also think, and this is what also Coach Montgomery said the Blues are working on in practice, we're trying to be more aggressive on our forecheck. The tracking is nothing different than what we are doing. We just want to get back to doing it the way that we're doing it in December versus the last 6 to 9 games. So, again, one of those things where I feel like the Blues are not necessarily playing for anything, but I think that there is that kind of sense of, okay, well, not that the season's done, but, you know. Another thing that I found too is Jeremy Rutherford, again, put out a great article and it said, Braden Shen trade rumors. And I didn't even think about that, honestly, as somebody that could potentially be traded. And that was a player that never really crossed my mind. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a tease. In tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk about that because I never really thought about, wow, trading Braden Shen. But now that I saw this article and he does such great work, I want to talk about it. So we'll talk about that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blues. And of course, preview the finale of the Four Nations face-off between Team USA and Canada. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.